everyone, it's Allyson with Shane Rodrigues, and today we're going to be talking about how to pay attention to a meeting. So it is no surprise that not all of our meetings are going to be the most extravagant or interesting, but that doesn't mean that you can't still stay engaged during these types of meetings. So Shane, since we're on the subject, why don't you tell us a little background story about a time when you were in a very, very, very boring meeting?
Yeah, so it was when my school made the transition to online classes at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, and all the students in my program had like an hour-long meeting virtually talking about the changes that were being made moving forward. And the gist of the meeting was that we were moving all of our classes to online, but they stretched that out to an entire hour. So it was extremely boring, but we all had to be there because it was for our education, which is very important. But it just stretched out way too long, went over things that weren't necessarily important, and it just made that meeting very painful to be in. And trying to stay focused during that can be a challenge.
Yeah, definitely. I can kind of agree with that. One of my most boring meetings was an internship for a different company, and we had to sit through orientation. So instead of it just being like 1 or 2 days long, it was the whole week, so a whole 40 hours of sitting there in person and just basically only getting up like every 2 hours when they would allow us to have a bathroom break. So it was just very, very boring, and I know it was very valuable information to learn about the company and kind of what they stand for, but it just felt like it could have been shortened up a lot, especially just sitting and not being productive in any way and just having to absorb all the information. It kind of felt like I was like sitting back at the classroom. But of course, since it was in person, I actually had to show that I was paying attention because I wanted to make a good first impression, especially with it being my first internship and um, just wanting to make a good impression with the supervisors along with my other coworkers.
Definitely, yeah. That in-person meetings are way more challenging to stay engaged in, I find, than virtual ones. They both have similar issues, but their differences as well, I think, make in-person meetings a lot more challenging.
So, in order to stay focused, let's kind of talk about the meeting that you had with your orientation. What did you do with like your phone? Did you put it away? Did you kind of like out of sight, out of mind it? Like, what was kind of like your tip and trick to stay focused during this meeting?
Yeah, so usually what I try to do when I have meetings, I plug my phone in on the charger in a different room, and I find that that helps me limit my distractions. And then I know that when the meeting's done, my phone will be almost fully charged. And so if I have a couple minutes, I can go on it, refresh my mind after the meeting. But yeah, out of sight, out of mind is usually what I try to do. If I have my phone within arm's reach, I usually try, or I tend to at least check it 1 or 2 times during a meeting or during dinner or whatever it is. So for me, just putting it out of arm's reach is the best way for me not to be distracted.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. Like, if I feel any like little buzz or like ding, I'm like, oh, I wonder who like texted me. Is it my
Mm-hmm.
mom calling me? So yeah, definitely out of sight, out of mind. What I do personally is I put my phone on do not disturb. And then so if it's on do not disturb, that way, like if it is like an important phone call, like if my mom's calling me for like an emergency or something, it'll still ring through if she calls enough times. But if it's just the one time, it'll be like it won't vibrate at all.
Yeah.
So what other ways do you kind of pay attention to a meeting?
Yeah, so I always try to take notes, even if I don't necessarily need to. Just taking notes shows that you're engaged, and so the speaker or the people around you will notice that, and it will just show them that you want to be there and that you are focused. So yeah, notes is a great thing. I also like to always have a water bottle with me. Sometimes taking a sip of water can get you through an awkward silence or something along those lines. So yeah, notes and a water bottle. And if it's early in the morning, I substitute the water bottle with the coffee, of course.
Yeah, definitely. I wish I drank more coffee than what I do. Like yeah, kind of going off piggybacking off of like your note taking. I definitely note take, but like I'm not jotting down every single word for word because I don't want it to feel like
Absolutely.
a lecture class. But like just
Absolutely.
like an overall like highlight, or if someone brings up a good idea, I'll just jot that down. I mean, I remember exactly like what, 'cause I try to like just keep everything short and sweet. But like just having like the little refresher, because usually other people, once you kind of get like that key word into their brain, they'll remember it. And then yeah, I kind of doodle a little bit. One of my high school teachers, like they always told me like like you're never gonna get in trouble for doodling in my class, because I understand sitting here, because our classes we had block scheduling, so we had 4 classes on A day, 4 classes on B day, but they were an hour and a half long. And one of them said that like you're never gonna get in trouble for doodling in my class, because I understand that they are a longer schedule. And I know that you're still paying attention. It's just a slight distraction from your brain. It's not like you're watching like 2 episodes on Netflix, or like bothering your neighbor, like you're doing something quiet, kind of like almost like a fidget spinner, but
Absolutely.
without like actually having it where other people can see what you're doing.
Absolutely.
So, kind of going off of like meetings that we're not really supposed to be in, like if we're having meetings with like supervisors, or if it's just a huge meeting, do you join the conversation if it's appropriate?
Absolutely. I always try to join the conversation and create conversation. I just think that it makes it a little bit more personal and makes it a little bit more in in it's it makes the meeting a little bit less painful if you jump in and have something to say.
I totally agree with that. Yeah. And I've noticed with my own experience that if I'm that they're talking about something, like they're talking about their weekend, that I can kind of jump in and say like, oh, and so they know that I'm here and like I'm paying attention to what's going on. But obviously, once they get into the statistics of the company and how that's doing, and I do not know anything that about that, obviously I'm gonna dial it back and just kind of let them talk to each other, communicate, but still try to grasp the information, because something that my mom always told me is you're never too old to stop learning. Like you always want to keep learning.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
so I just kind of like, even though it might be a little bit painful, especially with the meetings where it's just the supervisors talking to each other, but I feel like it's just a really great way to learn. And then again, like later, if it's a different meeting, you can transfer over the basically the gist of the meeting, which I think is tremendous. And I feel like other supervisors and other coworkers pay attention to that. So they kind of know that you're just in the loop of things.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so we talked about like the big supervisor meeting, but what if it's just a meeting between like coworkers, kind of like our level? Do you still jump in, or do you just kind of tune things out?
No, again, I always try to jump in. I always try to give my opinion or my 2 cents. Again, I think it just makes the meeting a little bit more enjoyable and less painful, and also just kind of humanizes you a little bit more. Sometimes when talking to coworkers, you kind of get stuck on putting on a super fake front that it has to be business all the time. You can't talk about your favorite hobbies or your sports teams or what you did on the weekend. And so once in a while, I try to jump in and talk about things that aren't just work related, just to give my coworkers an idea of what I do outside of the regular 9 to 5.
Yeah, and like I definitely agree with that. Like I like at first when my supervisor told me that, oh, like the interns do like a 10-minute meeting in the mornings, blah blah. Like I am not very one to open up about myself. So I was kind of like dragging my feet in, and then after a couple days of like, oh, like it's not an actual like meeting, it's just like, how was your weekend? What do you guys have planned for later today? Like, are you overwhelmed? And I feel like it kind of made the interns kind of grow closer together, and I feel like we have a really good bond. Like with not just the interns that I work with, like you and I work together pretty much all the time, but it's allowing me to branch out and like kind of spread my wings and talk to interns that I may not see or work with on a daily basis.
Absolutely, I agree.
So, kind of moving on, what are some ways that you can show respect in the meeting, that the moderator or everybody else in the meeting can like see? What are ways that you show respect to the speaker, basically?
Yeah, so definitely eye contact. It might be a little bit more challenging if you're in a big boardroom. Um, if you're virtual, just like making eye contact through the camera, as well as just having limited things in front of you. That goes for virtual and in person. If you are taking notes, just having paper, pen, pencil, and that's it. And probably the most important, like we've already talked about, not having your phone out in sight is probably the number one way to show the speaker or moderator that you are listening, paying attention, and you want to be there.
Yeah, definitely. What I do personally, if it's an in-person meeting, like you said, I'm making eye contact. I'm not eating any food. I'm being completely focused on that. I'll be taking my little notes, but I'm trying to not like tap my pen against the desk or like tap my foot a little bit if I need like somewhat of a little bit of a distraction. And just kind of keep to myself and be neat, be proper, and make sure that I'm sitting up straight and not like I have to remember to smile. So I'm
Yep.
not just looking like I don't want to be here. Like I have to force myself to look a certain way in order to, I don't know, maybe enjoy the meeting a little bit more. And then for online meetings, what I do, like what I'm doing right now, is I'm at a quiet spot in my apartment. My dog is out of the room. He's actually in his kennel in a different room right now. And just because I know he's a little bit of a distraction, and if he sees somebody walking by, I know he's going to bark at them, not in a mean way, but of course, but just like, hey, like somebody's here. And I don't want that to be a distraction for A, other people in the meeting, or B, to the speaker. I feel like pets and like other distractions like that should just be able to be like gone and put away in their kennels, or you move to a different section of the house where they do not have access to it. And then same thing, what I do with my phone is I just put it on to do not disturb and kind of out of sight, out of mind it, just to ensure that the speaker or and then everybody else has my full respect.
Absolutely. Those are great ideas and great tips for paying attention during a meeting.
So what are your biggest pet peeves that others do around you in a meeting?
Yeah, so the number one pet peeve that I have would be if I was like a speaker, would be being late. That to me right away just tells me that they don't care about what I have to say and that they don't really want to be there, which is definitely hurtful and just sets off the meeting on the wrong foot. Also being on their phones, that is one of my biggest ones. I know some people do take notes on their phones, but what I like to do is take notes by pen and paper and then transfer it over my phone after, just to avoid that the speaker thinking that I'm on Twitter the entire time. Um, and finally, just making like any sounds that I feel like clicking a pen I find super distracting. Um, so yeah, those three things probably round out my biggest pet peeves when it comes to distractions in a meeting that other people do.
Yeah, like definitely the pen clicking kind of gets me and like the stomping of the foot.
Hmm.
One of the meetings that I was in like a couple of years ago, it was a board meeting at the one of the companies that I was interning for. And it was a huge project deal. And surprisingly, they just said, "Okay, interns, like come in, like we're going to show you like how we run the business a little bit." And one of the potential like investors, all he could care about was how he was going to be getting his money back in return, which I mean, I understand, like it's an investment, like that's the main goal, but he would cut off the speaker like in mid sentence. So I felt like that was kind of rude for the speaker. And then another option, or another thing that this guy did, he would start eating while the speaker was talking. And I felt like that was really rude, especially it being like a board meeting with all the higher up execs of the company, and then also the other companies, like his coworkers, essentially. Like I just thought that was like really rude and kind of disheartening, because like he only could care about himself essentially throughout the whole thing. And then kind of like on a lower level, just yeah, just definitely people being on their phones. And then if they have, I know everybody gets a little runny nose now and then, but when they keep like sucking it in instead of just going like getting up and blowing their nose,
Absolutely.
that drives me insane. Like it, like oh, okay. What advice would you like to kind of give to other people so that they don't set off somebody else's pet peeve, since we're on that topic?
Yeah, so just think about your own pet peeves and what bothers you, and try to stay away from those things or similar things like it. And just being as respectful and as courteous as possible, and bring everything that you might need into the meeting with you within reason. So maybe a Kleenex might be a good idea if Allison's the speaker for you. Um, and just, yeah, like I said, have everything you need, and I'll bring in a water bottle as well. As like I said, I find that is a great way to uh, get out of maybe speaking. If the speaker asks a question and you have you're taking a sip of water, you might get out of answering the question, and also gives you a little bit of a distraction if you're finding the meeting super boring.
Yeah, definitely. What I like, my advice is like it basically all it comes down to is respect. Treat others how you want to be treated, that golden
Absolutely,
rule. Um,
absolutely,
and I feel like one of the bigger kind of pet peeves like everybody has is when people tap their foot on the ground. So my suggestion to that would just kind of be put your hands kind of like in your lap and then maybe just like tap your fingers against your knuckles, because that's not obviously as loud and you won't be kind of shaking the person that's sitting next to you so that they can't feel it either. But yeah, it just basically just boils down to respect and just taking into consideration. And you never know, somebody could be having a bad day, and that could be the thing that kind of sets them off to be maybe not the nicest to you and kind of target you after the meeting or something like that. But yeah,
yeah. I think these are all great tips and tricks to uh, be to help respect the speaker at a meeting.
all right. Well, unfortunately, that is all the time that we have left today. So thank you, Shane, for coming in and sitting down so we could talk about how to pay attention to a meeting.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time as well, Allison.
All right. Bye.